Morning and a very warm welcome to edition 8 of the Vickery Holman at Leisure series. My name is Mike Easton. I head up the hotels and hospitality agency business with support from the professional services team, and we cover all aspects of commercial property advice from landlord and tenant through to building surveys, valuation and rating. This morning we've a pretty packed format, although we've lost one in the middle at the moment, but he's just getting a drink of water, we think. And we'll be looking at more detail in the growth. Thanks, Ollie. More detail in the growth of the staycation market, its impact on the Southwest, and what the future may bring. So let me introduce you to our contributors that you can see here on your screens. I'm going to start with James Twigger. James, please introduce yourself and your involvement in the sector.
Good morning. Hi, everyone. My name is James Twigger. I'm the Managing Director of Accounting for Everything. We're chartered accountants based in Torbay. Personally, I've been brought up in the hotel industry since I was born. I was born into the hotel industry, and my parents ran a large hotel in Paignton for over 40 years. So yeah, it's been part of my life. And then obviously now I'm moving to accountancy, and one of our major focuses is the hospitality and leisure sector.
Thank you very much. And next up, we've got Melanie Burton. Melanie from Tozers, please tell us a bit about yourself and what you do.
Good morning, everybody. As Mike says, my name is Melanie Burton. I'm a partner in the Tozers Parks dispute resolution team. So my area of specialism, apart from being dispute resolution, is holiday and residential parks. And I've been working for that particular industry for about 15 years.
Thank you very much. And for an on-the-ground perspective, we have Ollie Steer-Fowler, who, if nothing else, is guilty of starting the At Leisure webinar series when he was with us at Vickery Holman. Ollie,
guilty as charged.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Guilty as charged. Yeah, thanks, Mike. Morning, everyone. My name is Ollie Steer-Fowler. I'm a director at John Fowler Holidays. We run 13 holiday parks, own and run 13 holiday parks across the Southwest and South Wales, so Devon, Cornwall, Somerset, South Wales up to Cardigan. Third generation family business, one of the larger operators in that part of the country. So yeah, we have a fun day every day at work, but yeah, interesting to talk to everybody this morning, and looking forward to it.
Thank you very much. And then finishing off our session today, I have colleagues Nicola and Jordan. Nicola, if you'd like to introduce yourself and what we can expect.
Good morning. Yes, Nicola Murrish. I'm an associate with Vickery Holman. I focus on business rates consultancy for the leisure industry, so hotels, holiday parks, pubs, self-catering, covering Devon, Cornwall and slightly beyond.
Thank you very much. And Jordan?
Yeah, thank you. I'm Jordan Kennedy. I work in our Truro office and our Plymouth office at Vickery Holman, head of business rates consultancy and covering the whole of the southwest of England. And from Nicola and I today, you can just expect a bit of an overview of what's gone on over the past year in the world of business rates and what we can expect leading up to the 2023 revaluation.
Thank you all very much. So if I can ask you just to drop off for a second, and I'll bring you back one by one as we run through this morning's session. Thank you. So today's session is being recorded and will be available via our YouTube channel. Please feel free to share content with your wider network, and particularly if there's anything of specific interest, you'll have everyone's details to come back to. For those joining us for the first time, if I can direct you to the chat function, which you'll see on the right of your screen. This is being facilitated by the multi-talented Leslie Anderson of Hedgerow Marketing, and we welcome engagement. So please feel free to ask any questions as we go through this morning, which we'll either try to address at the end of the session, or we can come back to you after if we run out of time. There will be a couple of polls this morning as well. Appreciate audience participation. It's always good to know what's going on out there. So I'll kick off with some brief market sentiment, which suffice to say has been particularly bullish. The Southwest market has seen record lows in terms of available stock and record highs in terms of values achieved. Keeping a handle on assets and business has never been more important, which is for us, we're trying to take a gauge of changing legislation, keeping up to speed with how income and profit are being derived, and what that may actually look like in more normal circumstances. So far, the increased operational costs have been matched by high occupancy and rate. And whilst the heat of the market last year may look to cool a little over the next 12 months, we do expect continued growth at the high end of the market for the group operators that are looking to expand, and also for new entrants starting out. It seems very much that it's the middle ground that tends to feel a little bit more of the pain, unfortunately. So balancing out, what we're seeing is there are more places to stay than ever before, better facilities there for many. And against that, we've got the rising cost of living and return to the foreign holiday market, which ultimately means that customers are weighing up where to spend their money and what experiences they're looking for in order to get best value, and indeed how often they may decide to travel. So we've popped up a poll, which I think we've got a few people coming in on at the moment. This was kindly actually sent across by Robin Barker of Services for Tourism, and was a poll put out by the Office of National Statistics. So it's just a bit of a feel about when people think life might well return to normal. So I'm just looking at some results now. So nationally, the results were 32% of people in Great Britain felt that it was more than a year for us to get back to normal. 12% thought we'd never get back to normal, and 9% felt we were already there. So I think that probably tallies a little bit with what's going on there now. Thank you very much, and we'll pick up on that probably towards the end of the session once we've got full results. So let's get some further insight, and if I can invite James Twigger of Accounting for Everything back onto the screen.
Hello.
Hello again. Hello. So James, I'm just going to start with what your firm's experience has been. You deal with a lot of leisure clients, and how that's been over the last couple of years.
Yes, obviously we're based in the English Riviera, so our biggest market is the leisure and tourism sector. And obviously, as I mentioned a minute ago, I've been brought up in that, so naturally that's kind of where we have focused our clients. So obviously we've already got covered last year. We had that staycation boom. The year before, obviously 2020 was the year that we had so much uncertainty, and actually many of our clients did okay during 2020 because they had the government support of the loans, they had the government grants. So it's I think where we're seeing uncertainty is kind of now. So we've been supporting our clients throughout the whole of the pandemic through webinars, and we've got our app, we've got newsletters, so whenever there's anything. So we've been kind of supporting our clients however we can. But so yeah, going forward now with the VAT increase coming up in the end of this week is a big thing. Making tax digital is another consideration for those who aren't VAT registered. In 2 years' time, they're going to be needing to be thinking about that. And obviously the general uncertainty of the market and the opening of the borders and more people kind of going abroad. So yeah, we are kind of at a very interesting time for our clients anyway.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I suppose you talk about all the supports that the hospitality, well, all industry had. Have you seen sort of much difference between you deal with the leisure sector, that's quite a strong part of your business, but you also deal, I guess, with the retail guys, bit of the industrial guys. Have you seen any particular changes between the sectors as to how that's all rolled out?
Out of all our client bases, I think we've seen the most kind of uncertainty in the leisure and hospitality, and it's the trades. Yes, they've got issues. I mean, every industry's got issues with labour at the moment. So trying to get the right staff at the right time is a big issue across the board. We've seen that more in the hospitality sector. We're seeing kind of a wage increases being forced above rates of inflation. In fact, we've got one chef that works that we know in Torbay that has worked for 3 of our different clients, and we've seen his salary go up, and as he's negotiated that in big jumps, and that's not unique. We're seeing that across the board with kind of this kind of over and above like wage inflation. So yeah, we have seen it, and we've still got people who are trying to get the grants, the Omicron grants that were announced back before Christmas. Some of our clients still haven't had money for that. So in this kind of quiet time, I know obviously we're in March now, we're getting to Easter, so we're starting to see the increase in the market, but we have had a couple of unfortunate business failures because they just simply didn't have the cash to keep on paying the staff because without furlough and everything else. So yeah, we are having that uncertain time now.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think, yeah, as you say, as they're sort of pegging back some of the supports, it's that moment in time. So I guess if it's slow to get the support that it is available, that's a shame, because yeah, it's a harder time of year coming up to pre-Easter, isn't it?
Yeah, I say January, February are the kind of the two quietest months of the year, and I'll be honest, some of our B&Bs last year did very well, because when we went into the lockdown in early 2021, and then the grants were coming in, a lot of B&Bs and guest houses are closed during that time of year anyway, so they don't bank on having any income. So actually, some of them it really helped kind of catch up for the losses from 2020, and also kind of put them into a good position for 2021. But obviously, with all of that support now going, we are having some difficult conversations with clients, and also about what the future options are.
And I guess as a practice, I mean, you know, your front line to give advice. You know, there's a huge amount of change that's come through that your clients need to get a handle on. Have you had to change your sort of operating practices along the way?
So, I mean, I mentioned 2 years ago I started doing the webinars. So we were doing those 5 days a week, and then 3 days, and we're still doing the monthly again now, and that's just kind of helping clients. I was doing a lot of business support, so I've actually taken myself away from the tax and accounts direct role. So the rest of the team, and we're a team of 11, so I'm lucky enough that I can kind of take myself out of that, and I'm now focusing. I'm a certified business coach for the Entrepreneur Circle, so I'm helping small business owners. Again, a lot of my clients are hospitality sector, and that's where we're going now to help them look at their costs, look at their sales and marketing and their financial side. Obviously, conscious, as I mentioned a minute ago, a lot of businesses have got the added headache of making tax digital coming. So a lot of our B&Bs aren't VAT registered, so they've always done an annual tax return. In 2 years' time, so April 2024, all sole traders with an income above £10,000 are going to fall under the new Making Tax Digital, or the extended Making Tax Digital regime, which means quarterly reporting. So without trying to scare people out there, it's going to be a big change, and it's why you're watching TV, listening to the radio, you're always hearing adverts for Xero, for QuickBooks, for Sage, because they're pushing this out now in advance of this big change in a couple of years' time, which I still think is generally under the radar of many people. They see the adverts, they think it's just for VAT, but actually it's coming for and property owners that get rental income over 10,000. So yeah, there are some big changes in the accounting and tax world coming.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Thank you. Just out to the audience, if you've got any questions for James, please feel free to put them on the chat, and we will address those at the end. Similar to what you just talked about there, I suppose, James, we've seen quite a lot of new entrants wanting to come down to the southwest, normally from the Midlands and the southeast, sort of migrating west, and a lot of first-time business owners. Any particular gems of advice you tend to give these people, apart from maybe, you know, consider it fully?
That's pretty much it. I mean, we're very fortunate. We get a lot of people. We deal largely with new and growing businesses, so we get a lot of people starting up, and we can support them in the early stages. But yeah, the amount of people I mentioned that move down to the area to semi-retire into running a B&B or guest house, and one of the first discussions is a 24/7 job. So anybody in the industry knows that. And so I've been kind of brought up in that industry. There is no escape, really. I mean, you can, but it is very difficult to have time off, and actually distance yourself from the business. And that's what we kind of make people aware of. We talk about the upcoming legislation changes. I said making tax digital, making sure that if we can, getting them set up on software from day one, kind of ready in advance. And just make people aware that obviously we are accountants, but we're also, you can see from the screen, we're business advisors, and the role of the kind of the number crunching accountant, that's kind of a very old-fashioned description of an accountant. What it's all about now is it's about being proactive, providing advice and support, and being there on the end of the phone to help people, or Zoom, or in person, in fact. So we're doing a lot more on Zoom now, but it's about being there as a business advisor and a business support as much as anything else.
And I guess this sort of transfer to digital actually be quite helpful, because people are having to look at their businesses once a quarter rather than maybe once a year. Less
absolutely
and easier for you to advise.
And you say, yes, people do look at it once a year, but they might be looking at it the January after the end of the last tax return. So what we might be dealing with is some information that's 21 months out of date.
Yeah.
So it's called Making Tax Digital, but actually there isn't any real change to the tax legislation. It should really be called Making Accounting Digital, because it's really the whole concept is it's about updating and improving your accounting systems, and then you'll be kind of doing a quarterly update and then the year-end tax return. So effectively, it's kind of 5 submissions to HMRC a year rather than the 1. But I think it is going to benefit businesses because it's really going to make them kind of force them to keep their bookkeeping up to date and actually see where they are with the business. And using software, you can compare year on year, you can compare to a forecast moving forward. So it's all about that management side of the business and kind of using the numbers to help grow the business and move it forward.
James, thank you.
No worries at all.
Speak to you at the end of the session. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. So if I can ask for Melanie to come back onto screen, and I'm just going to dive off a second. And Melanie, if I can leave it with you to run through your presentation. We're getting there. We always get a bit of comms. There we go. You're back.
Good morning. Yeah, don't ever leave anything technical to me. Sorry about that. Hello, everybody. As I said earlier, my name is Melanie Burton, and I'm a partner in the Tozers dispute resolution team. We are the national legal advisors to the British Holiday and Home Parks Association, and we provide, amongst other things, a legal advice helpline to the association's members. And what that has meant is that we really have been on this roller coaster ride with the members and our own clients who own holiday parks over the last couple of years. And it's enabled us to get a real sense of the challenges that the industry has faced. And I've chosen to talk to you today specifically about issues that the holiday industry has faced in terms of holiday bookings specifically, and how coronavirus has impacted them, and what we've learned about that, and what you can do to ensure that your business is better protected in the future. So I've picked out 5 issues. There were many. It's been an incredible time for holiday businesses, but I've just picked out 5 to talk to you about today when you are dealing with your holiday customers, and specifically around the enhanced rights that they now have under the Consumer Rights Act 2015. And the less known piece of legislation that came in 2013, which has got a very catchy title, Consumer Contracts, Information, Cancellation and Additional Charges Regulations. I'm just going to call them the CCRs because it's much easier. And I'm going to talk to you about how they impact on the legal relationship that you have with your customers. So it seems really obvious for a lawyer to tell you that ideally your contract should be in writing, but more specifically, what the CCRs say is that your customers must be given the opportunity to review any terms of any contract before they commit to buy your products. And that information that is contained in your contracts must be accessible, clear and comprehensible. So, for example, if you direct your customers to terms and conditions which are on your website, then you must ensure that it is easy for your customers to be able to navigate there. But most importantly for your business, you should have a process in place that allows you to record the fact that you have directed your customers to those booking terms and conditions, and that they have confirmed that they've read and they've understood them. Those terms and conditions must include certain information. So this is where the CCRs kick in. Most importantly, the contract must contain a full description of the goods and the services. So, for example, the type of the accommodation, what the customer will expect when they get there, the price that they're going to pay. Also, any cancellation arrangements that you would expect your customers to follow in the event that they wish to cancel their booking. I'm going to come back to that in a bit more detail later because it was a real problem over the last 2 years. And also any complaints policy. It's been an incredible busy time for the holiday industry. You've suffered staffing problems because of coronavirus, recruitment issues. That's impacted on your ability to provide sometimes the best service that you would want to. And my experience living in a holiday town is that holiday customers haven't been that sympathetic to holiday businesses. So it's really important to have a complaints policy in place. The other thing that the CCRs say is that if you don't bring the contract terms to the attention of your customers and prior to them agreeing to be bound by your booking terms, and if they don't contain certain minimum information that is prescribed by the CCRs, then the contract may not be binding. Now, to some extent, that could mean that you have to give a full refund. So it's something that is worth getting right. And now is a good opportunity before the season kicks in and everybody gets super busy to think about how you might be able to improve the position to be able to avoid any issues arising over the holiday season. So this is an issue for those businesses that sell holidays in privately owned accommodation. So you might have your own business fleet if you're a holiday park, for example. You might also provide an agency service to your customers if they have accommodation on your park of a certain standard. And one of the issues that I'm coming across more and more is the fact that there seems to be an inadequate number of terms in place between you and the private owner of the accommodation. So you're falling foul of these limited terms, but you're bound by the consumer contract legislation that obliges you to provide a certain level of service, but you might not have similar terms in place that oblige your private owner to meet the same demands. And this can result in a loss for the business. And this is what I'm focusing on, particularly with this slide, but also damage to your reputation. So we find in the majority of cases that businesses that provide an agency service to their private owners also manage all of the housekeeping services. And we've seen that there has been a dramatic increase in the cost of those housekeeping services. Staff wages have gone up, specifically because housekeeping staff are quite difficult to find these days. Wages are going up as a result. But there isn't a term in a lot of these contracts obliging the private accommodation owner to absorb these costs. So in effect, the business is not able to pass on these increased costs. What you need in effect is, if you have a contract with your customers that goes beyond 12 months, and most accommodation providers do, that you have terms and conditions that allow you to review these charges that you incur on behalf of your customers and pass them on to your private owner. Similarly with repairs, in the majority of cases, repairs might have to be undertaken in an emergency, quite often while the accommodation is in use. You need concise terms that allow you to be able to manage those issues without necessarily having to contact the private owner, particularly if it's an emergency situation. And also terms that allow you to spend a certain amount of money without actually having to obtain authority specifically for those works from your private owner. Also, in the majority of cases, there is an expectation that you will provide accommodation that meets a minimum standard. That might be because you sell holidays through a third-party booking agent who might have levels of accommodation starting with bronze going all the way up to platinum. And those contracts are between you as a business and those agencies. So you are on the hook initially for making sure that you meet those minimum standards. You need to have similar terms in place between you and your private accommodation owners to be able to require them also to meet those minimum standards. What flows from that is quite often a loss of revenue to the business. So if, for example, certain private accommodation doesn't meet those minimum standards, then you might have to pull it from the books, and that's going to represent a loss to your business. Some third-party agency contracts allow the agents to charge for charge an amount of the booking price, despite the fact that you haven't been able to provide the accommodation. So it's important that you deal with these minimum standard issues quickly, and the way to do that is to have comprehensive terms and conditions in your contracts. I'm going to very briefly touch on that, because it is absolutely not my area of expertise, but I'm also seeing that if you do provide an agency service to your private owners, the way in which you present your booking terms and conditions, so that's the contract between you and your customer, and also the contract between you and the private owner, can dictate the amount of VAT that you pay. So if you are reviewing your terms and conditions, it's also worth taking some advice from a VAT specialist, as well as your lawyer. I always recommend, if I'm drafting these types of terms and conditions, that they're then put in front of the business's VAT specialist for them to review and give advice on. I work quite closely with VAT specialists to ensure that any liability for VAT is made clear to the business, and obviously in the majority of the cases reduced down as much as possible within the confines of the law. So one of the problems that the holiday industry specifically has faced over the last couple of years is a huge loss of revenue, initially in relation to enforced lockdowns brought in by the government. These issues were covered quite considerably by the consumer watchdog, and the report that came out from that was that fundamentally, if you provide a holiday that you are not able to supply to the customer, then they are entitled to a full refund. There isn't a huge amount that we can do that. That's how consumer law works. But there are other things that you can do to protect your business from other types of consumer cancellations. And that is by having quite concise terms in your booking contracts. Now, you can't profit from a cancellation, but you are entitled to recover all of your reasonable losses that flow from that customer cancellation or that breach of contract. Now, it's quite difficult to predict what your losses are going to be when you're drafting your cancellation terms. So most businesses favour a sliding scale. So the sooner you cancel your holiday, the greater the opportunity to receive a full refund. The closer to the booking date you get to, the likelihood is that you're going to receive little or no refund from the holiday provider. And that's because it reflects the holiday provider's ability to be able to replace that loss of income. So the earlier you cancel, the more likely it is that you can receive a refund, because the holiday provider will be able to replace that loss of income. Obviously, 2 days before the booking date, it's unlikely that that's going to be possible. So it's reasonable for the business to be able to recover those losses by retaining all or the majority of the holiday booking price. Now, to be able to do that, you do need to have concise terms. So it's worth looking at your cancellation terms with fresh eyes, based on the experiences that you've had over the last couple of years, and in particular in relation to COVID-related cancellations. So we know that there isn't a huge amount you can do if the government says that your business must be closed and you can't provide the service. In those circumstances, you're going to be on the hook for giving back the whole of the price paid. But there have been a number of other circumstances that have arisen over the last couple of years that holiday businesses have found difficult to grapple with, because this is a new experience for you. So, for example, the weather report on the July weekend says that it's going to rain, and all of a sudden the customer cancels and says that somebody in their booking party has got COVID. So they're not able to join you. Now, in certain circumstances, if your terms and conditions are written correctly, it does allow the business to be able to retain some or all of the booking price, because you remain able in those circumstances to provide the service. So it's not a breach of contract on your part, it is a breach of contract on the part of your customer. So normal cancellation rules will apply despite the fact that somebody in the party may have COVID. Housekeeping rules. This is a really popular one on holiday parks that my team works really closely with, but it applies to all accommodation providers. And not all customers behave appropriately when they're on their holiday, and that behaviour can have an impact on the enjoyment of other customers who are having holidays nearby, but also sometimes on the reputation of the business. So it's a really good idea to have concise housekeeping rules that explain to customers your basic expectations in terms of how they must behave when they are enjoying the accommodation. Also, minimum expectations in terms of how children should behave and how they should be supervised, as well as pets. So those holiday parks that have worked with Tozers and the BH&HPA over the last year might have seen pet rules, for example, extending considerably. And that's in response to a couple of really tragic incidences that have happened on holiday parks where children and dogs have been left unattended. So it is Tozers' recommendation that you have quite strict rules about how dogs should be supervised in the accommodation, and specifically that they should not be allowed to be supervised by anybody under the age of 18. We also suggest that you have rules that allow you to exercise the right to exclude those pets if, in your reasonable opinion, that pet presents a potential risk to either the booking party, your staff, or anybody else that is enjoying your accommodation and services. Also, going back to the COVID point, it's good to have, hopefully it won't be necessary this year, but we really don't know. But it's good to have a number of rules that deal specifically with COVID arrangements. So, for example, if it becomes necessary again to have imposed social distancing rules, that you have in your terms and conditions a term that allows you to review and amend your housekeeping rules in the event of a health and safety issue, but that you have a number of concise rules already dealing with these types of issues that you can rely on if it becomes necessary. So last one, complaints. As I say, it was really, really busy season for everybody last year, and with that inevitably brings about a number of consumer complaints. So we touched earlier on the CCRs providing that you must include in your booking terms and conditions any complaints policy that you have in place, and we would recommend that you review your existing complaints policy, update it if necessary, and ensure that it is recorded carefully in your booking terms and conditions, and that any staff who are given the job of managing complaints are made aware of it, are familiar with it, and that they follow it strictly, because this enables you to manage complaints as they arise, hopefully within early resolution, so that you don't then get a complaint when somebody goes home and subsequently demands the whole of the booking price back because you have failed to provide a level of service to them that they would reasonably expect for the price that they paid for the holiday. Also, not a legal point, but it enables you to hopefully avoid any negative online reviews about the service that you have provided. But if it doesn't, it is worth, if you do have staff who have access to these reviews and have a responsibility for replying to them, ensuring that they are adequately trained on what is the business's message when it receives a negative review. So how do you deal with it? What do you say openly, because it's available for everybody to read, so that any potential impact is limited. but also if your business has the opportunity to resolve a complaint there and then, so that it's put to bed before your customer goes home, despite the fact that you might not necessarily agree with the complaint, it is worth thinking about whether, in terms of your business reputation and ultimately the time it takes managing complaints later, whether it's really worth avoiding dealing with these complaints effectively whilst they're with you. And I'm just to give you an idea, I'm going to very quickly tell you a story to finish off about a holiday park operator who received a complaint on day one from a holiday customer who'd found an item of underwear in the bed, which appeared to have been turned over, freshly laundered by the housekeeping staff. And his view when he received this complaint was that it was impossible for his housekeeping staff to have not detected said item of underwear. And therefore, he took the view that the complaint was disingenuous and that it was a means to reduce the price that they'd paid for the holiday because they were demanding compensation there and then. And what ultimately happened was that the customer went home having not had a satisfactory resolution to their complaint, and put a very, very detailed complaint online about said piece of underwear in the bed, which didn't do the reputation of the business any good at all. And at that point, the business felt it necessary to ask for legal advice, which incurred their time, obviously my time. And on reflection, possibly it would have been better to deal with it there and then and just accept the customer's complaint and try to resolve it. So that is all from me today. Thank you very much for listening.
That's lovely. Melanie, thank you. That was quite a comprehensive review. And I think in the meantime, Michelle has asked a question in regard to letting property, which we'll deal with at the end. But I think there was quite a lot in Michelle's piece there that would give you some insight into what you might need to consider if you are going to let property. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Ollie Steer-Fowler back onto the stage. Ollie, if you're about.
I am about. I'm being billed as the man on the ground, so I feel like it's inappropriate for me to be in an office. I should be out on a beach in Cornwall somewhere, surrounded by caravans and lodges with a microphone.
I think it is all the wrong way around. You have got the most corporate background.
I'm sorry. I apologise. I apologise in advance. Yeah, I was just listening to Melanie's example there. It is a very we get some. You do get some varied scenarios in holiday parks. That being one of them. I would like to point out that was not a John Fowler holiday complaint.
Fair enough. Well, thanks for joining us today. I mean, as I said in the sort of the preamble, you were the guy that almost started all this off. So
yeah, it's good to be back.
Yeah, you're gamekeeper, poacher, whichever way around you want to see it. But I'm going to kick off, if that's okay. Take you back to March last year. You were working at Vickery Holman, going through your qualification, still working in the family business. I think Mr. Johnson provided us with the road map back to reopening and moving on from COVID. That changed a lot, I think, for you personally and within the family business. It'd be good to sort of understand where it went from there, really.
Yeah, it was really, I was working at, you're right, I was working at Vickery Holman at the time, and I remember, things were relaxed, well, not relaxed, but there was a clear roadmap in quite a short time scale, and it essentially opened the floodgates for UK bookings. And, from what we'd gone through with 2020, I remember that the March 2020 was probably my worst time in business, where there was a horrible 5 or 6 day period between when we knew coronavirus was coming. We sort of guessed at how bad things were going to get and where we were going to be as a business. And then having, the staff, we've got 450, 500 staff during peak season. We've got 30 people in the head office. Having that period where we had no furlough scheme, between then and the 23rd of March was horrible. So to go through 2020, which was obviously full of restrictions, uncertainty, to then get to March 21, where things looked like we had a clear roadmap from Boris of where we were going to be able to get to in the summer. Things just took off, and it was madness. And the phones lit up. Our head office was absolutely heaving. And I remember at that time that the pressures on me in my split role were massive. So the importance for me to get back to the holiday parks, because of really just the overwhelming demand for UK staycations at that time, was massive.
And ultimately, what was the impact of that? You had probably the best occupancy you've ever had, but you were still having to operate with some restrictions in place, and that was bearing, I guess.
Food and beverage especially was still impacted. There was still social distancing rules. All of our staff were still working under restrictions, and that's difficult to manage. And across last season, that was probably the biggest issue that we had, was actually managing the people on the park. There were a lot of people who took the opportunity last year to take a UK parks holiday for the first time ever. And going back to what Melanie's just said, in terms of managing people's expectations and managing complaints early, there were a lot of people who would have gone abroad. They would have gone, wherever, Spain, Mexico, on an all-inclusive, or wherever you choose to go. But they were going on UK park holidays last year, and most of those would have been new customers. And we have a lot of repeat business. So managing people's expectations on what was a new experience for them was very difficult.
Have you changed your offer, would you say, as an outcome of
we certainly changed our operation. We've set how we internally operate. We are much more flexible now, but the offering, as I'll go on to speak about later, with the the macroeconomic factors that are impacting our specific sector at the moment, our offering has been forced to improve. We're constantly striving to improve our business and our offering and our product, which is, we're principally an accommodation business, and our offering has just been further accelerated by coronavirus, because, as I say, we're now, last year especially was our best opportunity to put our best foot forward, and people expect a very, very high standard now. And, our offering has had to adapt seriously quickly, because historically the holiday park industry has been something which has been very closed door. Maybe, 15, 20 years ago had quite a sort of rudimentary name, out in the sector, and was seen more as a budget offering. Nowadays, it is completely different, and it is a completely different offering. People's, there's lots and lots and lots of offerings out there, but the standard in general is so much higher than it was 20 years ago. It is staggering.
Yeah, so you've got more people coming to the parks, but expectations have risen. I guess we saw that in the hotel sector to begin with, and then that sort of rolled out and
It's filtered through, because the basis for any parks business, forget facilities, location and your offering. You are principally an accommodation provider. If your accommodation isn't right, then you're not going to get very far. So that's really where the focus has been. And now, as I'll go on to in a bit, with private equity's influence in our sector becoming more and more prevalent, that has driven standards of facilities, general park offering, through the roof. So that follows on from that. But principally, you asked where our product has changed. We have moved forward with our standard of accommodation and our offering. The breadth of our offering now is bigger than it's ever been. We're looking to do tree houses, we do lodges, we do caravans, we do hot tub offerings, we do glamping, tenting, touring. We've got a full spectrum. There's standalone houses, apartments, chalets. So the offering is bigger than it's ever been, wider than it's ever been, and catering for as broad a spectrum of people as it's ever been.
So I guess on that basis, I mean, we're all quite aware of the rise in cost of materials, supply chain issues. As a business, you've probably been, right there trying to grow stock, trying to keep the work coming through, building for the future. Have you had what's been the impact on you for supply and cost?
Well, the pressures of the last couple of years have put demand. There's demand for accommodation, and it has brought our development pipeline of new pitches, planning gain forward. And you want to fill those bases as soon as possible. Every operator in the country will want to fill their development as soon as possible. And there are only a finite amount of lodge and caravan manufacturers in the UK, some of which now have been acquired by big groups. And that restricts supply. So when you twin that with macroeconomic factors, the fallout from Brexit, coronavirus restrictions, delays in supply chain, it's been really difficult to get hold of lodges. And I know I've seen the list of people who are watching this today. There's park operators there. Every park operator I've ever spoken to in the last 18 months, 2 years, has had problems getting caravans, lodges, base materials, everything. It's been a challenging time. And actually, there's not, where there's been acquisitions and a restriction of the market, there haven't been many new players coming in at all, really, to the lodge manufacturing and caravan manufacturing sector. So it's been difficult.
And then I suppose stepping aside from that for a minute, as a park owner, you must have had quite a lot of experience of approaches from some of the bigger guys. There's been a lot of that going on, but also you've wanted to grow. You've acquired a park in the last 12 months. That probably wasn't easy. How have you found that?
I wouldn't say we're in a unique position, but we are in we're, for want of a better word, we're one of a dying breed in terms of we are still an entirely family-owned operation who have got, say, more than a dozen parks. There aren't many of us left. The impact of private equity coming into the sector, especially American private equity, has made things really, really difficult for acquiring new sites. There's a lot of door knocking in the sector going on. Very, very rarely do you see something come to the open market now. And we get approaches 2-3 times a month. Maybe more in peak season when there was real focus last season on the sector and people trying to get into the sector. We would get approaches, but it's nice. It's nice to that people are approaching you. They think you're doing the right thing. That's great. But for trying to acquire new sites and grow, we're trying to grow. It's been a good couple of years. We've acquired 2 sites. We've been very, very lucky in acquiring 2 sites in 24 months in Wales. But it's a really, really competitive market, furiously competitive at the moment. It is really difficult.
And so I guess, is it that your medium-term plan is to invest in existing stock? I think, were you putting some investment into more food and beverage offer? So the natural progression when there's no stock in the market is to invest in your existing sites. And as I was alluding to earlier, the progression in big parks, so sort of 150, 200 unit pitches plus, is to invest in your facilities. And that is where the guest expectation marries up. They are expecting the full works now when they come on. It used to be that you'd have your location, your accommodation would be the base for the customer, and then they would spend the majority of their holiday exploring the local area. Now they want that fallback position on the site. They expect all of the facilities on the site to fall back to. If it's a rainy day, they want the pool complex. They want 1 or 2 minimum to really food and beverage offerings on the site. And that's where the money, that's where our sort of business model has changed towards when we're not able to expand as we'd like to. Thank you. Appreciate that. Looking ahead, bookings wise, I think generally in the market, the word is the sort of the week, 2 week stays this year, very, very strong. But there's a bit more chat about perhaps the shorter break market is starting to cool down a little bit. I don't know if you've got any sort of a bit of a take on that you're willing to share.
My take on it is that if you had compared this year to a normal year, say 2019, we would be having a very good year. Bookings wise are still strong. Yeah. 2021 was a phenomenally freakish year where you had rollover bookings from cancellations in 2020 and moved bookings from 2020 from the original lockdown. You had low levels of VAT. You had unprecedented demand for UK staycations, and it all just married together to make a phenomenal year. So it's difficult to sort of keep an eye on the context here. Bookings as it stands at the moment, bookings are still very strong compared to a normal year. But where our concern really lies at the moment, Mike, is it's not a concern, but we've got one eye on where the next 6 months are going, because obviously we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis. The energy cap for UK households is just about to rise exponentially on the 1st of April. We've got there's a number of issues from who would be buying our holidays. The customers who would be buying our holidays, regular homeowners who are looking to their expendable income. One of the first things that may go out of that list when things get really tight is a holiday. So that we're hoping that's not the case, and I'm sure that there will be policy change. I'm hoping that there will be policy changes to combat that if it becomes a really big issue, which I'm sure it will do in the short term. So we've just got one eye on that for how that will affect our sites. Short breaks, I think sites that are extremely well located, i.e. close to major transport links, will be really strong for this season. But in general, at the moment, as it is on the ground right now in March 22, bookings are relatively strong, but we've just got that one eye. I may be being over pessimistic. My dad is, I don't think in 25 years, my dad has said that there's been a good season. So yeah, I've always learned through our family business to look at both sides of the coin. But it will certainly be a really, really interesting year to see where this goes. Obviously, the tragic events in the war in Ukraine as well are having impacts on energy prices, and that will continue. So yeah, we've just got to have, we've got to have our eyes open and really be reactive to what's happening. One point I will make is specifically from last year, marketing. We spent 15% of our marketing budget last year. We spent very, very little on what we had to, we would need to spend in a normal year to compete for bookings. Bookings just came to us. That is going to become a much, much bigger cost, along with other costs, as Melanie mentioned in her segment there. That will become an issue really, really quickly. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting.
Yeah. I suppose the take on that is that you had a lot of new customers last year that, as you say, you didn't have to necessarily market to get them, but you maybe wouldn't have had them in normal times anyway. I suppose it's then just trying to keep hold of what you've got, generate.
And that goes back to my point on the offering. Every park had to put their best foot forward last year and make their offering as strong as physically possible to try to retain. Even if you retain 25% of that new customer base, that is a massive step forward in terms of we like to think that we have a relatively strong recurring customer base. So if you can add that pot of people to your existing recurring customer base, this has been an extremely positive time. One of the few positive outcomes of this entire crisis.
Ollie, thank you. I'm more, because I'm conscious of time, I'm going to ask you to duck out just for a moment.
Unlike me to talk, Mike.
Oh, wait, wasn't you? You're all right. Thank you. And if I can ask back Nicola Morris and Jordan Kennedy onto our virtual stage. Thank you both. We always like the slight delay for sound and visual. Nicola's obviously further west than you are, Jordan, so she's still waiting to hook up. I'll duck off again. It might be that you're going solo at the moment. We always have one comms issue on every edition, but are you okay with?
Yeah, that's fine. I'll make a start.
Okay. Bless you. All right, I'll dive off for a second.
Yeah, no problem. So as we all know, business rates have seen a lot of activity in recent years since the pandemic, such as the introduction of government assistance to the sector. And we've also got the forthcoming revaluation to think about. So in the short time Nicola and I are going to be speaking to you today, we're going to touch upon the key issues that have happened in recent years, what's happening right now, and what is upcoming. So we're going to begin just by taking you slightly back to the past and talk you through some of the key things that have happened in the world of business rates over the past year. So this includes the extended retail relief scheme, support grants offered to businesses affected by the pandemic, the fundamental review of business rates, and the autumn budget of last year. So I'll just start by taking you back a little further in time to the initial outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, the government's response to this was to announce in the March 2020 budget that it would increase the business rates retail discount to 100% and extend it to include the leisure and hospitality sectors. This relief applied to occupied properties. This relief then continued in 2021. From the beginning of April till the end of June, eligible properties continued to receive a discount of 100%. From the 1st of July 2021, this continued, but at a reduced level of 66%, which continues until the 31st of March, so just a couple of days' time. Grants were also made available to support businesses throughout 2021. One, for example, being on Tuesday, the 5th of January, following the announcement of another national lockdown, the government announced the new one-off closed businesses lockdown payment for affected businesses worth up to £9,000 per property to help them through to the spring. Autumn 2021 saw the publication of the government's final report on their fundamental review of business rates. Key findings from this were announced by the Chancellor in the autumn budget, and the review concluded that steps would be taken to make the system fairer by moving to 3 yearly revaluations after 2023 and by considering the arguments for and against an online sales tax. So that brings us to the present day, and last week's spring statement did not include any particularly new relief measures, but did confirm that reliefs will continue to be available from the 1st of April under the Retail, Hospitality and Leisure Business Rates Relief Scheme. The scheme will provide eligible occupied properties with a 50% relief up to a cash limit of £110,000 per business, and that will be for the full year. This, of course, will be a welcome ongoing relief for many business owners, as too will be the recent approval by the House of Commons of the freezing of the business rates multipliers for another year until the end of 2023. The business rates multipliers are set by central government and are used to calculate business rates liability. So this approval means that, assuming all property facts remain unchanged, business rates bills should not increase in the coming financial year, which will give business owners and business occupiers some certainty until the April 2023 revaluation. And of course, as was mentioned slightly earlier, a one-off Omicron hospitality and leisure grant was also made available to hospitality, leisure and accommodation businesses in January this year, which was intended to support businesses with one-off grants payable. Applications for this needed to have been made by the 18th of March, and all monies are intended to be paid by the end of this month. So again, in a couple of days' time. But hopefully all eligible businesses should have been contacted by this point. That's over to Nicola.
Thank you. So the business rates revaluation 2023 is now fast approaching. The revaluation will take place on the 1st of April next year, based upon property rental values and the state of the economy as at the valuation date of 1st of April 2021. This valuation date is always 2 years before the revaluation to give the valuation office time to value all properties. At revaluation, all properties are given a new rateable value and the multipliers are revised. And previous revaluations, there's also been a transitional relief scheme introduced to phase in substantial increases in rateable value. Before the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, the revaluation was originally planned for April 21, with the valuation date 2 years prior in April 19. As part of the government's immediate reaction to the pandemic, one of the measures introduced was a postponement of the 21 revaluation, with the aim of giving some certainty in those immediate uncertain times. The revaluation was later confirmed as being delayed until next year. At Vickery Holman, our leisure and hospitality clients have been completing their requests for information in recent months as the valuation office compile their factual and accounting information in readiness to revalue all assessments. As always, the valuation office was seeking the most recent 3 years accounts up to April 21. The information required would have included trade receipts for accommodation, bar, food and other leisure income for hotels, or bar and food income for pubs, for example. The majority of property classes in the leisure and hospitality sector are valued on a receipts and expenditure basis. A fair maintainable level of trade is adopted and the VO adopts an appropriate percentage. The percentage applied varies depending on expected profitability and trading performance. The fair maintainable trade adopted should represent the annual trade considered to be maintainable at the valuation date, on the assumption that the property will be carried or the business will be carried out by a reasonably efficient operator responding to normal trading practices and competition in the locality. These samples are based on true accounts leading up to the valuation date, so April 2021. That will have had regards to the previous 3 years' trading accounts. This, of course, means that the 2020 season, during the height of the pandemic, will be one of the years formulating the revised rateable values. This, as we've already seen from the previous talks, was, of course, no ordinary season, with businesses forced to close until the 1st of July and in some cases beyond. Once open, some businesses then did extremely well, which, of course, again, is not a true reflection of the trading performance. This is clearly not a good year on which to base business rates valuation. It remains to be seen what the Valuation Office will do with the 2020 trade information when much of the year was in lockdown and the hospitality sector, of course, closed. We suspect that the previous 2 summer seasons, so 2019 and 2018, will be more formative rather than 2020, to give a fairer indication of normal levels of trade. We're expecting draft rateable values to be released in December this year, so we'll have time between December and April to identify any immediate errors, so the correct rateable value goes live from April. We thought it'd be useful to share some statistics from the last revaluation. In general, hotels saw an increase in rateable value averaging 29%. Of all hotel assessments, 19% have been checked or challenged, and out of those, there was a 98% success rate. In comparison, caravan parks saw increases averaging 25%, with only 2.1%, which is 186 caravan park assessments, actually checked. Of those assessments, 98% saw a reduction.
Thanks, Nicola. So yes, potentially plenty more rateable values still to check over the next year. So on that note, we just thought we'd briefly talk you through a couple of case studies to explain how we go about achieving savings on behalf of clients. So I recently acted for the owner of a Cornish holiday cottage complex, which had a rateable value of 26,000. Our involvement saw the RV of this complex reduced by 7,500, so 29% reduction, which saved our client £12,000 over the life of the 2017 rating list. And had it not been for the reliefs granted due to COVID, these savings would actually have been closer to £20,000. So for this, we submitted a check as we believed the VOA had calculated the RV of the property using an incorrect method. We argued that as the property comprised a complex of over 5 units, it should be valued using a percentage of the gross receipts. So we therefore submitted accounts for the years 2013 to 2015, stated the percentage we believed should be applied to the fair maintainable trade, and requested that the RV was reduced on this basis from 26,000 to 18,500.
Okay, so the next one we've had involvement with was a 90-bedroom hotel in Cornwall. So this hotel's rateable value was reduced by £41,500, which was about 26%. This saved the operator approximately £125,000 over the duration of the 2017 rating list. As we considered the hotel's valuation, we identified that the fair maintainable trade included trading receipts unrelated to the hotel and the hotel business. Our argument sought the removal of this income stream from the valuation, which then reduced the accommodation receipts as a percentage of the total turnover and reduced the income per bed space. So this resulted in not only a reduced agreed fair maintainable trade, but also a reduced adopted percentage and hence reduction in rateable value that followed.
So that's all from us. We really hope you found that useful, and please do remember that there is still time to check assessments before the list comes to an end at the end of next March, and with any reductions being backdated to April 2017 potentially in most cases. Great, thank you very much.
Jordan, Nicola, thank you. very much appreciated. I'm hugely conscious of time now because we've sort of gone over our allotted hour. So thank you ever so much for everybody who has stayed with us. I think it's a very full session. I'll have to come back. I think we just had one query, which from the amount of people that we had is staggering. But what I'll do, Michelle, is I'll dig out your details and I'll come back to you directly. If I could just have the panelists back on the screen a minute, just so that we can say our cheerios. So James, Melanie, Ollie, Nicola, Jordan, genuinely appreciate your time this morning and being so open to talking about, you know, what we're all involved in, and looking at the numbers that we had attend. I think that's been a really good result. So I'm going to sign off, let you guys say cheerio as well, and we'll all go back to our day jobs. So thank you everybody for attending, and I hope to see some of you soon.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Take care. Cheers.